Brainy Bunch. My name is Sarah.
And my name is Yola.
And we're neuroscientists. Today we have a very fascinating segment. We're going to zoom on into the brain and
we're going to talk about CTE.
So Yola, I know that CTE is a neurodegenerative disease, but what exactly does that mean?
Let's start with the basics. These are two neurons.
So what do the orange things represent?
The orange parts are called dendrites, and they receive inputs from other neurons in the brain environment.
Okay, so if those are dendrites, what is the red ball?
The red ball is the cell body, and it's also known as the soma. That's where most of the organelles are found, and that's where a lot of proteins are formed.
Okay, so we know what the dendrites are, and we see the signals, and then we have the red ball, that's the soma. What does the burgundy represent?
Burgundy represents the axon, and that's where a lot of cellular trafficking occurs for proteins or organelles, and it goes all the way to the end of the dendrites.
So I know one of the features of CTE is neurodegeneration. Does that mean just breaking down of neurons?
Well, somewhat. Basically what you have is that neurons are dying, and in big numbers, and the different parts of the brain are no longer connected as well as they used to be. So that can account for changes in mood, changes in cognition. Basically, the person isn't who they used to be.
So we just talked about neurodegeneration. Is there any other signs or features of CTE?
Of course, there's so many more. One feature is protein aggregation. The three main proteins that are aggregated in cases of CTE include TDP-43, aggregated phosphorylated tau, and as well amyloid beta proteins.
So we have neurodegeneration, we have protein aggregation.
A specific type of protein aggregation that's found in CTE is called tauopathy.
So what exactly is tauopathy? So this is a tau protein. What does that do?
It functions as a stabilizer for something called microtubules, and that's the yellow thing over here. Microtubules exist in the axon of the neuron, and usually what they do is that they help with the trafficking of products from the soma out into the dendrites of the neuron.
So let me get this straight. If we were to hypothetically bump heads and have a concussion, it's already falling apart. So these tau proteins are going to start to dissociate, right? And all those microtubules are just going to break down.
Oh yeah.
So then if we have all these tau proteins floating around, those phosphorylated sites are going to be exposed, causing for hyperphosphorylation. Well, why do we care? Well, because of the hyperphosphorylation, imagine me collecting a bunch of these tau proteins. They're going to start to aggregate together and start to accumulate. But what happens?
Once they accumulate, they form structures called paired helical filaments. Remember that we said that the usual localization is in the axon of the terminal. When you have hyperphosphorylated tau in the form of paired helical filaments, they start to migrate out into the soma and the dendrites of the cell. What you have is then an unhealthy neuron.
So we have neurodegeneration, we have protein aggregation, we have tauopathies. Now I can't seem to remember what the last one was. Or
Beta amyloid.
Why does that sound so familiar though?
Are you thinking of Alzheimer's disease?
So does CTE show a lot of symptoms that are similar to other neurodegenerative diseases?
I wouldn't say symptoms, but there is some pathology that's related to CTE.
So what exactly is beta amyloid plaques?
Beta amyloid plaques are aggregated in the synapses of the neuron. And what happens is that they affect neuronal signaling from one neuron to the next, which can contribute to neurodegeneration. Another very important feature of CTE, as well as other neurodegenerative diseases, is neuroinflammation.
So neuroinflammation, what exactly does that mean again?
So, neurons aren't the only cells in the brain. You also have cells called microglia and astrocytes. These are sometimes known as support cells. But what happens is that when there's toxicity in the brain, microglia and astrocytes release something called pro-inflammatory markers, and they increase the neuroinflammation in the brain. Now, let's sum it all up.
So we have the brain. Imagine all these white parts are like the pathways of the brain.
And let's imagine that this brain has CTE. The main features will be
neurodegeneration,
protein aggregation,
and neuroinflammation. Now what does this mean?
It destroys all those pathways in the brain.
And ultimately are going to shrink it. time, Yola. That was a very fascinating segment. What do you think?
I liked it.
So did I. Stay tuned next week. We're going to be talking about Huntington's disease. See ya!